Hello and welcome to Indus News with me, Osman Lone. Well, we begin this hour with our top story, and that's Brexit's got a deal. Britain and the European Union have finally struck a new Brexit deal after days of intense negotiations. But pro-Brexit Prime Minister Boris Johnson still has time to get the deal through to Parliament on Saturday, with the DUP opposing it. More in this report. The United Kingdom is set to leave the European Union with a revised Brexit deal. This means Britain will be able to strike trade deals with other countries in the future. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has urged Parliament to back the deal.
I do think that this deal represents a very good deal both for the EU and for the UK, and it's a reasonable, fair outcome and reflects the large amount of work that's been undertaken by both sides.
Under the deal, the UK will continue to abide by EU rules until the end of 2020 to allow businesses to adjust. The new agreement will keep Northern Ireland in the UK customs area, so it will be included in any future trade deals struck by the government after Brexit. European Commission Chief Jean-Claude Juncker said it's a fair deal which provides certainty.
We have a deal, and this deal means that there is no need for any kind of prolongation. This is a fair, a balanced agreement. It is testament to our commitment to finding solutions.
But opposition leader Jeremy Corbyn says this is an even worse deal than the one brokered by former Prime Minister Theresa May. Now on Saturday, the UK Parliament will vote on the withdrawal agreement brokered ahead of the 31st October deadline. Now, our other top story is the military operation in northeast Syria, where US Congress has voted to condemn President Donald Trump's withdrawal of American forces there. The Democrats and Republicans banded together to approve a non-binding resolution. The resolution states Congress opposition to the troop withdrawal, saying Turkey should stop its military operation in Syria. One of President Trump's closest allies, Senator Lindsey Graham, said Trump's decision will allow ISIS to re-emerge. US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said Democratic leaders cut short a meeting with the president, saying Trump had a meltdown over the vote.
I think that vote, the size of the vote, more than 2-to-1 of the Republicans voted to oppose what the president did, probably got to the president because he was shaken up by it. And that's why we couldn't continue in the meeting, because he was just not relating to the reality of it.
Now, as Trump and Turkey continue, the White House has released a letter to the public that US President Donald Trump sent to Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan. The White House said the letter rejects allegations that Trump green-lighted Turkey's operation in northeastern Syria. The letter, sent to Erdogan on the 9th of October, shows Trump tried to persuade him to reverse his decision to invade Syria. Trump told Erdogan he would not want to be held responsible for slaughtering thousands of people, and said he didn't want to destroy the Turkish economy with sanctions unless Ankara forced his hand.
You know, when you make a statement like that, it's so deceptive. Just the opposite of a green light. First of all, we had virtually no soldiers there. They were mostly gone. Just a tiny little group. And they would have been in harm's way. You have a massive army on the other side of the border. But more importantly, I didn't give them a green light. And if anybody saw the letter, which can be released very easily if you'd like, I could certainly release it. But I wrote a letter right after that conversation, a very powerful letter. There was never given a green light. They've been wanting to do that for years. And frankly, they've been fighting for many, many years.
Well, the United States has carried out a pre-planned airstrike in northeastern Syria. The Pentagon said the raid destroyed an ammunition cache and military equipment that were left behind by US forces. Coalition spokesperson Colonel Miles Caggins said the strikes involved 2 F-15E fighter jets. He said the raid targeted Lafarge cement factory after coalition forces had left the facility. The spokesman confirmed US forces had left the Syrian cities of Tabqa and Raqqa. US Vice President Mike Pence has met Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in Ankara to discuss Operation Peace Spring. Pence urged Erdogan to halt an offensive against Kurdish fighters in northeastern Syria. The US delegation also includes Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and National Security Advisor Robert O'Brien. Pompeo said he's positive about the prospects of a deal to halt the Turkish military operation. Meanwhile, White House economic advisor Larry Kudlow said the US is prepared to levy additional sanctions on Turkey. Turkey says it's killed nearly 700 Kurdish fighters in its military operation in northeastern Syria. Ankara is making advances into the border town of Ras Al Ain after facing stiff resistance through Tal Abyad. For the past 3 days, Ras Al Ain has been pounded by airstrikes and shellings. Turkey said it had seized control of the town yesterday, but the claim was refuted by SDF forces. Earlier, the SDF announced it's freezing operations against ISIS. The UN Security Council has expressed concern over the ongoing military operation there.
So the Council expressed deep concern over the risk of the dispersion of terrorists from UN designated groups, including ISIL, and are also very concerned over the risk of a further deterioration of the humanitarian situation in Syria.
President Bashar al-Assad says Syria will respond to Turkish aggression in any part of the country. Meeting Iraqi National Security Advisor Faleh al-Fayyad, Assad said Syria will use all legitimate means to counter Turkey. These were the Syrian president's first remarks since deploying troops near the border to support Kurdish fighters. Earlier, the Syrian army entered the strategic border town of Kobani, and the Kurdish Authority in northeastern Syria called for a corridor to evacuate dead and wounded civilians from the town of Ras Al Ain. France's Foreign Minister Jean-Yves Le Drian is in Iraq to discuss a legal framework to prosecute foreign ISIS fighters. Le Drian said Iraq's cooperation is crucial to devise a judicial mechanism. Around 60 French citizens are in Baghdad's custody with an affiliation to ISIS. This issue was discussed in Le Drian's meeting with his Iraqi counterpart, Mohammed Ali al-Hakim. 7 European countries, including France, Belgium and the UK, have been holding talks to set up an international court in Iraq to prosecute ISIS fighters. Well, we'll be back with more news from around the world right after this short break. Hello and thank you for joining us now. As Pakistan's crisis continues with India, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi says India's aggressive policies are a threat to regional stability. He was speaking in Islamabad and said India resorts to warmongering for electoral gains inside their country. He said New Delhi refused to engage in bilateral talks and rejected proposals to reduce conflicts. Mr. Qureshi said Pakistan desires peace and stability in the region so it can focus on its economic development agenda. The foreign minister said Islamabad's conduct continues to be defined by restraint and responsibility. While Pakistan's envoy to the UN, Malia Lodi, said a peaceful resolution to the Kashmir issue is essential for stability in South Asia. She was addressing the UN General Assembly's First Committee and said India's aggression is a direct threat to the region, especially Pakistan. Lodi said occupied Kashmir's illegal annexation violates UN Security Council resolutions and that Pakistan has always tried to avoid an arms race in South Asia. Well, Pakistan's Foreign Office spokesperson Mohammed Faisal says India's seizure of the subcontinent's water resources is unacceptable. The statement was given in response to Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi's threat to block rivers flowing into Pakistan. Faisal said Pakistan has an exclusive right over 3 western rivers under the Indus Water Treaty and said any step to deviate or stop waters from the rivers will be considered an act of aggression. Now in Sri Lanka, the army chief has sparked uproar by endorsing Gotabaya Rajapaksa for presidential elections. The endorsement comes after the front-running candidate vowed to scrap a UN-sanctioned probe into alleged war crimes. A newspaper ad was taken out and quoted Lieutenant General Shavindra Silva The advert read that Rajapaksa is extremely efficient and addresses the urgent need of security forces. Seeking an explanation from General Silva, the Election Commission termed the ad a violation of Sri Lankan election law. The coming elections have revived national debate on army troops accused of killing up to 40,000 civilians in 2009 while fighting the Tamil Tigers. Hong Kong's legislative session has been suspended after pro-democracy lawmakers called for the city's leader Carrie Lam to step down. Several politicians were manhandled out of the chamber by security guards. Pro-democracy lawmakers called on leader Carrie Lam to address the protesters' demands. A second day in Hong Kong's council continued as Lam tried to answer questions about her annual policy address. Lam is backed by China's government and announced measures to tackle the city's housing crisis. Now, Russia says it will host African leaders next week at the Sochi Black Sea resort to reassert its influence on the continent. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said the heads of 35 African countries will attend the first Africa-Russia summit. Peskov said the Kremlin has a lot to offer in beneficial cooperation to Africa. The summit will be co-chaired by Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi. Moscow was a crucial player on the continent in the Soviet era, backing independence movements and training a generation of African leaders. Well, staying with Africa, and Sudan has announced a permanent ceasefire in the country's war zones. The South Sudanese city of Juba is holding talks between new Prime Minister Abdullah Hamdok's government and rebel groups. But a key rebel group has refused to comply, accusing Khartoum of bombing their territory amid government-led peace talks in Juba city. Peace talks are being held within the heads of state from Ethiopia, Egypt, Rwanda, Uganda and South Sudan. In a statement, the Sudan People's Liberation Movement said government forces attacked South Kordofan. It also accused the government of supporting the Arab Hozma tribe against other tribes in the area. Responding to the statement, Sudan's government said it's called for an immediate halt to fighting in the country. In Spain, Catalan's regional president Quim Torra has called for a new independence vote. Addressing the Catalan parliament, Torra denounced violent protests and said the separatist cause is a peaceful movement. Catalan leader Torra said no court can prevent him from taking steps from freedom. Earlier, violent protests erupted in Barcelona following the sentences of separatist leaders for a failed independence bid. Police in Catalonia have detained 97 protesters since Monday. Meanwhile, Spain's Interior Minister said an operation to ensure security in Catalonia will continue as long as it's necessary. In Pakistan, the Duke and Duchess of Cambridge have visited Pakistan's eastern city of Lahore, where they attended a birthday party and tried their hand at cricket against Pakistan's cricket team. More in this report. Prince William and his wife Kate Middleton started day 4 of their 5-day visit to Pakistan at the SOS Children's Village, a charity organisation working with orphans. The royal couple celebrated the child's birthday with gifts and flowers. The Duchess also gave her first speech of the tour.
Being here in Pakistan this week, William and I have seen on several occasions how family is at the heart of your culture. Parents, children, aunts, uncles, grandparents all play important roles. You have reminded us exactly what family means.
Later, the royal couple played a game of cricket at Pakistan's National Cricket Academy. From there, they moved on to the Mughal-era Badshahi Mosque to attend a talk on interfaith harmony. This was followed by a visit to the Shaukat Khana Memorial Cancer Hospital, which was built by Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan in the early 1990s. Previously, the royal couple visited Chitral in the northern areas of Pakistan to see the impact of climate change on the country. They also met with Pakistan's President Arif Alvi and Prime Minister Imran Khan in Islamabad. The royal couple will conclude their visit tomorrow. Well, imagine being a child in Pakistan and the royal couple turn up for your birthday. Now, Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta has expressed gratitude to China for assistance in building a railway line linking Nairobi to the town of Naivasha. The project was part of the One Belt, One Road initiative, upgrading trade routes between Asia, Africa and China. More in this report.
Waving the Kenyan flag, President Uhuru Kenyatta inaugurated the country's new railway line. Trains stopped at every station, where a cheering crowd awaited the president. He promised his people that the new railway will bring prosperity to their country. Thanking China at the launch ceremony, Kenyatta called the Chinese true friends of Kenya.
The People's Republic of China, their various development partners, and China Road and Bridge Corporation. I want to thank them for being true friends of Kenya's growth and development agenda.
The railway line is expected to ease congestion at the Nairobi-Naivasha highway, as well as boost regional trade and the local economy.
It cuts down on the travel time. The second one is the mass transport. You're able to move many people at the same time. Again, it will open up Naivasha for purposes of especially industrial.
China is also working on the second phase of the project, which will eventually link Nairobi and the Uganda border.
Well, we interrupt our regular news program to bring you a live press conference with EU leaders about the new Brexit deal. Let's listen in.
I was able to recommend that this agreement, that this treaty be endorsed by the European Council, and it has been unanimously. So now the decision moves. It goes on to the House of Commons and the European Parliament for them to consider this treaty, this agreement, and I hope sincerely we'll ratify it so we can all move on to the next phase of relations.
Thank you. Finally, turning to the EU Chief Negotiator, Michel Barnier.
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thank you very much, Donald, Jean-Claude, Leo, for your constant support, not only today, but all along the last 3 years. Ladies and gentlemen, today's agreement is the result of an intensive work by both sides. The UK government has wanted to open one point in the withdrawal agreement, the questions, the protocol on Ireland and Northern Ireland. We listened carefully and patiently to the arguments. We explained our position. We worked closely with Leo, the Taoiseach, with Simon Coveney, the Taoiseach, and their teams. We persisted also when talks with the UK were difficult, and we succeed together. I won't go into details today. All our texts are available online in full detail, but I want to underline one point I mentioned already this morning. While the subject matter in the negotiating room may often, very often, have been technical about customs, goods, borders, what has mattered above all has been, for me and for my team, has been people in Ireland and Northern Ireland. For me, what really matters are the people of Northern Ireland and the peace of the island of Ireland. We now need this agreement ratified by our parliaments before the end of October, and then the work on a new partnership starts. Je voudrais ajouter brièvement 3 petits points personnels, si je puis dire. Le premier, c'est pour dire un mot de remerciement à tous ceux qui ont travaillé, et c'est un travail collectif pour réussir l'étape d'aujourd'hui, même si nous savons qu'elle doit encore être confirmée par les deux côtés, le Parlement européen qui a un rôle très important, qui a joué un rôle très important, notamment le Brexit Steering Group, et évidemment le Parlement britannique, la Chambre des communes. J'ai eu la chance, grâce à la confiance du président Juncker depuis 3 ans, de constituer une équipe exceptionnelle. Et je veux dire un mot de remerciement à Sabine Veillante, Stéphanie Rizzo, aujourd'hui Paulina Dejmek, Richard Shostak et chacune et chacun des membres de cette équipe exceptionnellement compétente et disponible, qui ont su créer avec d'autres équipes, celle du Conseil, Donald, le secrétaire général du Conseil, Yépé, Didier, direction des services juridiques, chacune des équipes des 27 gouvernements, et évidemment le Parlement européen que j'ai cité. Voilà, tous les services de la Commission.
Well, we were just listening to an EU press conference on the new Brexit deal that's been proposed and agreed by the EU. And Michel Barnier started speaking French, so we'll take a break and we'll be back right after these adverts. Welcome back. Now in business news, Pakistan and Egypt have agreed to measures to boost the two countries' economic potential and bilateral trade. The decision was taken at the first meeting of the Pakistan-Egypt Joint Working Group held in Islamabad. The two countries agreed to enhance trade in sectors including textiles, agriculture and medical products. An MOU was signed between the Trade Development Authority of Pakistan and the Egyptian Commercial Service. The Pakistani delegation was led by Secretary of Commerce Ahmed Sukera, while First Under-Secretary of Egyptian Commercial Services Ahmed Antar represented Egypt. The IMF says rising debt levels in Africa pose an increasing risk to the region's economies. IMF representative Ivan Papagogu said over a dozen countries are at high risk of debt. The IMF said for low-income countries, the issue of debt is becoming critical. Major lending countries from Europe have become the dominant source of bilateral credit for low-income countries. The IMF said that those creditors should consider the benefits of adopting sustainable lending rules. US stocks opened higher as worries over geopolitics eased after Britain and the European Union struck a Brexit deal. Upbeat earnings from tech company Netflix and Morgan Stanley also boosted investors' sentiment. The S&P 500 and Dow Jones Industrial Average have risen at the opening. The Nasdaq Composite also gained a little. Well, it's 27 degrees here in Lahore, but let's take a look at the weather around the world. Well, that's the news for now, and that's all from me and the team here in Lahore. But we'll be back at the top of the hour with the headlines. Thank you for watching, and bye-bye.